Today, this building stands as a global symbol of American power. It looks permanent, immovable, and heavily protected. But that pristine white exterior hides a history of near-total destruction. In August 1814, an invading army succeeded in marching directly into the nation's capital and setting the president's house entirely ablaze. With the command center in ruins and the government in flight, the survival of the United States was no longer a certainty. Citizens watching the flames feared the young republic was collapsing before it could even establish itself on the world stage. This catastrophe grew out of a specific set of military and political choices. The path to the fire began years earlier, rooted in a conflict that many in Washington expected to win with ease. In the early 1800s, the United States was a fragile new nation trying to find its footing. Across the Atlantic, Great Britain stood as a global empire with a military reach that spanned the planet. Tensions between the two had been escalating for years. British naval forces were actively interfering with American maritime trade and capturing American sailors to serve in their own fleets. Frustrated by these blockades, American leaders declared what we now call the War of 1812. They moved forward under the assumption that the campaign against the British would be a brief, straightforward path to victory. Instead, the country was pulled into a grueling, multi-year conflict. Battles raged across the North American frontier, with U.S. forces taking heavy casualties and suffering repeated tactical defeats. By the summer of 1814, British commanders decided to stop chasing skirmishes in the wilderness. They drafted a plan to strike directly at the political center of the United States government. The American leadership had been so focused on their own expectations of success that they failed to prepare for a direct, decapitating strike on their own capital. This early layout map of Washington, D.C. shows its wide borders and sparse grid. In 1814, it was a small town lacking serious fortifications. On August 24th, thousands of British troops marched toward those borders, meeting American forces at Bladensburg. The defense disintegrated almost immediately, outmaneuvered and overwhelmed. The American lines broke, scattering soldiers into the surrounding Maryland countryside. Word of the rout reached the capital within hours. Knowing the city was lost, President James Madison and his cabinet grabbed whatever they could carry and fled into the hills. The instantaneous failure at Bladensburg transformed Washington from a command center into a totally defenseless target. While politicians scrambled to evacuate, First Lady Dolley Madison stayed behind in the executive mansion. She refused to leave until the building's most valuable national artifacts were secured. Her most famous act was ordering the staff to save this portrait of George Washington. They ended up breaking the frame to get the canvas out just hours before the British reached the front doors. As evening approached, British battalions marched into Washington. There was no resistance, only the eerie silence of abandoned dirt streets. The commanders ordered the systematic destruction of public property, starting by setting the Capitol building on fire. Next, they turned to the president's house. Soldiers raided the pantry, smashed the furniture, and used it as kindling to deliberately ignite fires throughout the residence. For the citizens watching from a distance, seeing thick black smoke pour out of the nation's most important landmark was devastating. Many feared the attack would permanently damage the country's future. The burning of the White House was the ultimate physical manifestation of a total strategic failure. But just as the flames were reaching their peak, an unexpected event halted the destruction. Historical accounts detail a sudden, violent storm rolling over Washington. Eyewitnesses reported severe winds, lightning, and a massive funnel cloud touching down right in the middle of the Capitol. The torrential rain extinguished the fires before they could completely level the structures. At the same time, the force of the storm battered the occupying troops, forcing the British to break their occupation and retreat toward their ships. It is a deep historical irony that when the American military could not defend the capital, a chaotic natural disaster saved it from total annihilation. When the United States government returned, they found the British gone, but the heart of their capital was a blackened, gutted shell. Instead of abandoning the site, the government began a stubborn push toward recovery. Laborers cleared the scorched debris, repaired the stone walls, and hoisted new timber framing to rebuild the interior. The recovery was swift. By 1817, the soot was covered and the walls were replastered, allowing President James Monroe to move back into the restored residence. Today, those pristine white walls physically hide the char marks of a near-total collapse. The survival of the White House proves that true national resilience is found in the ability to rebuild from absolute ruin. If you want to uncover more stories hiding behind familiar landmarks, subscribe and join us for the next journey into the past.